good. Hi, welcome everybody. This is the Holiday Survival Guide for Parents, session 3. xMinds is the organization hosting the event today. That's Partnership for Extraordinary Minds. And for those of you who are new to xMinds, we're a parent-led nonprofit group, and our mission is to improve educational outcomes for autistic students in Montgomery County. And we're very happy to be able to provide some support for parents, and that's why we are here today. Magui is here to help parents. We do so much for our children, and and to be a good parent, I think we need to take care of ourselves. So that's what this time is for. Magui.
Great, thank you so much, Melanie, and thanks for having me. This is session 3 of 3, so this is our last session, but don't worry if you haven't attended any of the others, it's fine. I'm gonna quickly go through what we saw in the first 2 sessions, but first I always like to start with an invitation to breathe, to just take a breath and just kind of arrive wherever we are, let go of what has happened before this, and let go momentarily for a little while of what's yet to come for the rest of our day. This is a very, very simple mindfulness practice already. So we're already practicing mindfulness, and the invitation is just to either close your eyes or just lightly, cast them downwards, and make sure that both your feet are planted on the floor, and just take a few breaths in through the nose and then out through the mouth. And oftentimes, just by doing this, consciously breathing out through the mouth, we can feel a certain letting go, especially around our shoulders and our neck. And if not, at least we can sometimes also sense that there is tension, which is more than we normally do. We go around with tension in our bodies throughout our day without actually becoming aware of that tension. So again, just an invitation to breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth. And perhaps take note of all those points of contact of our body in the chair or the sofa or the surface that we're sitting on. And that is just also a very simple way to connect to our body, which seems like a very basic thing, but we don't do it. We literally live our lives as if we were kind of walking heads, as if all that exists, under our head from our neck downwards, didn't really matter. And so then let's take one final breath together, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, and simply just thanking ourselves for taking the time to listen and to be, and to think and to reflect about some of these issues, about how we face our holiday season as parents of autistic kids. So for those of us who haven't attended before, my name is Mauro Moreno. I'm a certified mindfulness teacher and coach, and I really work with parents. I'm not an educational specialist. I don't really work on the kids. I work with the parents for their own well-being. I am also an autism mum. My son Adrian is 13 and has a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And my work is all about us living less stressful lives, about us connecting to our well-being, and therefore being able to connect to our children better, because it is actually really related. So this is the third part of the series. In the first series, we talked about identifying what we want and need, because again, oftentimes with the holidays, whether it's Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, we just assume that we're going to do things a certain way, but we don't necessarily question, well, is this really working for me? Is it working for my family? Is it working for my neurodivergent kid? In the second session, we looked at ways to adjust once we have identified, because again, we can't change things unless we first identify what it is that we're doing, what it is that we might want to do differently, or actually not do at all. So in the second session, we talked about ways to release, to change, to negotiate, and to communicate. And the negotiating and communicating are actually particularly important because, again, the holidays are highly ritualized, highly expected, full of expectations. And oftentimes we suffer most from not communicating any changes or any ways of doing things differently to our friends and family, and that is what kind of sometimes can get us into conflict or into stress about differences of opinion. So in this last session, we're going to talk about the how do we actually make this happen? Once we've identified what we want to change, and once we've looked at ways that we can actually change the things we want to change, how do we commit to that? And I'm just going to give you a few very practical mindfulness ideas, or ideas based on mindfulness practices. So in the first session, we looked at why holidays can feel so stressful for ourselves, for our kids, and what we might want and need, again, for ourselves, for our kids, and for the family. So other children that we might have, and our partners, if we have them. And we did some exercises to identify things to add, to change, to drop, and to delegate. And I think the delegation is quite an important one because, like, oftentimes, especially as mothers, we feel that we have to do it all ourselves. We also talked about identifying an activity that we are going to be doing just for us because we want to do it, not because we feel we have to do it, but because we're really going to enjoy doing it. And the importance of having a kind of like a meeting at some point before the holiday madness really kicks in with our spouse or partner, or any other responsible adult that we might live with, to just get clarity, to, again, negotiate and communicate. And then to really identify what are the non-negotiables. So this session is all about making that happen. And I'm going to talk about three things: managing our energy better, because this is really what it's all about, mixing it up, and then I'm going to give you those mindfulness practices, or rather mindful practices, actually, because it's not even about necessarily sitting down and kind of meditating, not at all. So the first point is our well-being depends mostly on how we manage our energy. And I know that all of you know that. I also know that we don't really take decisions based on this, on this very simple and well-known fact. And this is the same for everybody, including our autistic kids. But again, we oftentimes, it's not that we forget, but we go along in our life, making decisions and making commitments and putting stuff on our plates without thinking about how we're managing our energy. And so it's basic, but it's true. Sleep, food, intake of alcohol or other substances, exercise and movement, and then light and fresh air, which at this time of the year is particularly important because we live in the northern hemisphere and the days get shorter, and the lack of light can also impact us. So this is called core effect in neuroscientific terms. And again, it's very basic, but we don't always take it into account. And yes, the holidays will tax us on all of these things because we tend to sleep less or have nights where we sleep less because we're at parties or because we're staying up late with watching TV or with celebrations and house. We eat more food. We tend to eat more and kind of heavier things that our digestive systems are maybe not as used to at other times of the year. We do tend to drink more. We sometimes move less because we're indoors more because of the cold. So again, just doing a bit of keeping this in mind. It's really not rocket science, but we just don't do it. So we need to schedule. We need to identify and set aside moments to take care of ourselves. And this is something that, depending on the age and the profile of our children, we need to also model for them so that they will also do it for themselves. And oftentimes they do need a bit more help, and we kind of need to monitor their care, their well-being and their energy levels, as well as monitoring ours. The problem is that we tend to do that for our kids, but we don't do it for ourselves. We think we can't afford to. So some ideas is, and again, it can be just one day, one moment a day. You can either put that in your calendar and make it explicit, and that can actually be a self-care moment for everyone, especially if we're all at home and it's a holiday, we're not working, to actually say to everyone, we're doing a self-care moment and everybody's going to do it at the same time. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to identify a time or a moment in the day when it's going to be easier to do it. So first thing in the morning, first thing, when we get up, or last thing at night, although that can be tricky because sometimes we're just too tired. Or just after lunch, or so and then it just becomes easier to associate it. You're kind of created a bit of an anchor where you know that, okay, every day after lunch, after I've tidied up the kitchen, that's going to be my 10-minute of self-care, or that's going to be my 20-minute, depending on how much time you have. Okay. You can tag it onto an activity that you already do. So again, I just mentioned tidying up. Well, the tidying up can be a self-care moment. I'm going to talk about this a bit further on. But you can also attach it to the tidying up. So first I tidy up, and then I take 10 minutes for myself. So yeah, you make that association, and that means that it's harder to forget it, because oftentimes we have the best intentions, but then we just forget it. We get caught up in the whirlwind of life. But again, if we put it in there somewhere, either because it's a time of the day or because we attach it to something else that we're already doing, we're more likely to not forget it, to basically do it. And to let others know about this, especially our partners, but also sometimes our children. In fact, I would say oftentimes our children, because again, we're trying to also encourage them to do it. But to say, look, mommy's going or daddy's going to go and sit in silence for 10 minutes, or I'm going to go and listen to a podcast for 20 minutes. And this is going to be a time for myself to recharge my batteries. And you can do the same for yourself at the same time or at another time. And it's very important that we all do this. And the point is to keep it small, to keep it doable, and to keep it meaningful to you. So if you, for instance, love going for walks, or you feel that you really need the sunlight, then maybe your self-care moment is, again, to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes after lunch, or at a particular time, first thing in the morning, to go for a walk. But if you hate the cold and you don't like wrapping up, and you just don't want to do that, you shouldn't. That is not going to be self-care, even if you force yourself to do it. It will be good for your body, but you will not necessarily feel that is something that you're doing because you really want to, but rather because you've told yourself you have to. And it's a very subtle distinction, but it's a really, really important distinction, because we're more likely to keep at something that is meant to be recharging us if it really is recharging us, not if we feel it's an obligation. So some examples: giving yourself a hand massage as you're doing the dishes, or after you're doing the dishes, or after you're tidying up. Oftentimes, I notice my hands get really, really dry in the winter, because we're using hot water, and because of the heating and everything. So just having a little tub of cream by the sink and just giving yourself a nice quick massage and putting that cream on. It doesn't feel like a lot, but it is a signal that we are taking care of our body. Of course, that might not be the only thing you do, but it is one of the things that you can do. closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths when you are in the restroom. How many times do we go to the restroom each day? Many times. If instead of going to the restroom with our mobile phones and sitting there and spending 10 minutes just scrolling through our Instagram account, we actually didn't take our mobile phones, and we didn't do it in a minute and a half, but actually sat there for 4 minutes and did what we had to do, but also just closed our eyes and took a few breaths or looked outside the window and noticed the changes in the yards, in the gardens, in the leaves that, there are no leaves or they're all on the ground. But again, not thinking, oh, I must clean, I must tidy up the yard, just looking and taking it all in and breathing. That is a mindfulness practice. It doesn't actually take that much more time than you would normally use to go to the restroom. To do some simple stretches just before bed, going to bed at night, or when waking up. And again, I'm not talking about doing a full kind of workout routine, although if that is something that you would enjoy doing, then by all means do it as well. But sometimes it's just about, again, just getting in touch with our body. To drink a tea or a coffee or a champagne or a wine, in quiet, in peace, or with some nice music that you enjoy when your kids are otherwise occupied. Or to, this is a kind of a negative one, to not do things when your kids are busy, if they're watching TV or they're playing on their Xbox, rather than go, oh, I've got 45 minutes, I need to do these. I'm sure you do need to do a lot of things, but how about you say, okay, well, if I have 45 minutes or if I have an hour, I'm not going to spend the whole hour doing things. I'm going to spend some of it doing some things that need to be done. And again, question what needs to be done, because oftentimes there's a lot that we think needs to be done that doesn't actually need to be done. And the rest of the time, again, 10 minutes resting, maybe putting your feet up, So let's also mix it up, because a lot of times people, again, what I said before, self-care, if self-care is seen as another to-do, then it's totally counterproductive and it's counterintuitive, and it's actually going to end up, we're not going to end up doing it because it's going to be another obligation on our very long list of to-dos. So have fun, let go of the schedule sometimes. Absolutely. Think of your energy as a bank account. You have to balance the deposits and the withdrawals. And deposits and withdrawals will look different to different people. And this is why we need to know ourselves. We need to know what charges my batteries, what recharges my batteries, or what fills up my bank account and what depletes it. So, is going to bed early, or getting up a little bit late, something that's going to charge you up, or is that going to stress you more? You have to be the judge of that. Is maybe, letting the cleaning up slip a little bit, is that going to be something that is going to give you a bit more time to just, again, put your feet up, or is that actually going to stress you out more? The parties, they can be recharging, socializing can be a lot of fun, but it can also be depleting, especially when we stay up late or we drink a little bit more than usual. So it's about thinking, is this depleting me? Is this recharging me? And at what point does the recharging become depleting? And then maybe I need to then call it quits, So again, mixing structure with free time. And actually to do this with our kids' needs. And this is a really interesting one, because, for instance, my son, when he has a lot of free time and there's very little structure, he tends to do two things. Either he is on electronics, he wants to watch TV or play on his Xbox, which then after a certain point stresses me out because I feel that that is not good for him or his brain. Or he starts kind of floating about. I call it floating about. He kind of paces and will go up to his room and read, and then 5 minutes later come down and just kind of sit, that also stresses me a little bit, because I find that for me, it makes me feel like he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's bored, and he has a kind of low tolerance for boredom. So in our case, we know that we need to give some structure even on holidays and on kind of like free days like Saturdays and Sundays. So we need to put things in there so that he can have something to hold on to. and then put free times in between schedule times. And that is what we have found works best for our son, but then also for us, so that we don't end up getting stressed out about him kind of being a bit aimless and kind of wandering around. So again, this will be different for every family. I think something that's really important that we oftentimes forget, again, and I've spoken about this in the other sessions, is that the holidays become a time for being busier when it should be the opposite. We have the opportunity to be more available, especially if we can take time off from work. So aiming for less busyness and less agendas and objectives and less complication, to enjoy simple things. And that doesn't mean to say you don't see people, you don't see the wider family, or you don't travel, or you don't stay with friends, or you don't go to parties. But then, are you doing it because you really want to spend time with those people? Or are you doing it just because it's expected of you? Or because you don't want to miss out on something? Or because they've invited you and you feel you can't say no? All of these things taste very differently. They feel very differently. So enjoying, yes, enjoying parties, or enjoying certain foods, or enjoying certain people, but without necessarily feeling that we have to cram it all in. And then this thing about, it doesn't have to look a certain way. Again, there's a lot of expectations around the holidays that things need to be done in a certain way. And they vary widely between families and between different cultures and traditions. But still, within each one of those, it's like, this is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. Well, you can still achieve certain things like connection and, being with people you don't see maybe so regularly, without it having to look a particular way. So it's really less about what we do and more about where we're doing it from. Are we doing it from a desire to connect, to be available, to be present with others, to enjoy others' company? Or are we doing it from a place of it needs to happen because this is the way it's always been? I think that's a really massive change, like a paradigm shift. So just a few simple mindful practices that I wanted to offer. Being mindful doesn't take any time. And oftentimes I hear parents saying to me, I don't have time to be mindful. Actually, if you don't have time to be mindful, that's when you should really be mindful, because it means that you're running around like a headless chicken, and not paying attention. Being mindful and living mindfully is just about paying a bit more attention to what we are doing. So it is about bringing a certain quality of attention to the things we do, the people we talk to, the people we listen to, the people we're with. So avoiding places that are sensory overload for me, or for my child, or for my family. And I know that there are differences sometimes. So again, taking that into account, being mindful of that. I have actually found through my child's autism that I am hypersensitive to certain things, and paying attention to his sensitivities and his sensory profile has enabled me to realize that actually I have a sensory profile too, because everybody does. But oftentimes we kind of push through, and then it's no wonder that we end up, tired. Not needing to respond to 345 messages that we get saying Happy New Year. This happens a lot with Christmas cards and Hanukkah cards and New Year's cards and messages. So we are hyper connected to so many people, much more so than we have ever been. Things used to take longer to get because it was actually snail mail. Now it's all instant, it's all on our phone. And that is a bit of a trap, because we will receive a lot of notifications, especially on days like Christmas Day and New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. And again, of course, they're very well meant. People want to reach out, but don't feel obliged to be, because the danger is we pick up our phones because one message came in, and whilst that message came in, another 5 came in, and then you start responding to them. And the next thing you know, you've been on your phone for 45 minutes, and your kids either having a meltdown, or has gone and done off something that they shouldn't be doing, or has gone off and sat down with their gaming, because you're not available, so what is important, or what's priority, and what is good enough, maybe we just don't have the time and the energy to respond to everybody's messages. Lock devices away from meals or at certain periods. Devices are designed to be addictive. We know this, and it's not just for our kids, it's for us as well. So they are attention robbers. Like, they actually rob us of our attention, and our attention is what they use to sell us stuff and to keep us hooked on certain platforms. And they're also helpful in so many ways, but just putting some limits. Go for walks outside or at a place that is sensory calming and recharging, and doing chores mindfully. So I often use the example of washing the dishes or cleaning the kitchen, because it's something that we often times have to do. There's this very simple exercise of 4, 5, 3, 2, 1 that allows us to connect to the senses. So the exercise is very simple. 5 things I can see. So you might be washing the dishes. You can look down, and the things that you see, the things that you can see looking through the window or looking in the room. 5 things you can see. 4 things that you can touch. So you can touch your hands. You can feel the touch of your clothes. There's always something that we can sense through our touch. 3 things you can hear. And even when we're in a quiet room, there will still be noises, the heating, the AC, just the hum of the fridge. 3 things we can hear. 2 things we can smell. If we're doing anything sensory based, like, again, washing or cleaning, there will always be smells. Some might not be pleasant, but we're smelling, so that is putting us in touch with our body. And then 1 thing to taste. And sometimes we're not eating, so there's nothing to taste except just the taste of our mouth. But again, it's a way to connect to our body. So that's a very, very simple exercise to just use all our senses, or our 5 main senses. A few more. Eat mindfully. This is a big one for the holidays, because, again, we eat a lot and there are special foods, but oftentimes we eat all these things and we're eating sometimes with anxiety. We're eating so quickly, we're not even savoring. So this is a very simple, it's called BASICS, and it's an acronym that helps to kind of go through what eating mindfully actually looks like or feels like. Breathing. Oftentimes we eat very quickly and we don't breathe. We're eating and we're breathing very shallow. So just breathing means that we are going to slow down, which is the S. But before that, breathing, paying attention, and slowing down. So paying attention to what you're eating, what it looks like, what it smells like, how hot it is, how cold it is, all these things. Slowing down. Investigate as you eat. Investigating is really just, do I like this? Do I not like this? Am I feeling full? It's just paying attention maybe a little bit more with your brain about what is it that I'm eating? What am I really craving? That kind of thing. C for chew. Chew, chew, chew. We have to chew because I always tell my son, our stomach doesn't have teeth. So the more we chew, first, it allows us to slow down and breathe correctly, and secondly, it means that we, it aids in our digestion. And S, savor. Just savor what you're eating and really enjoy it. Another practice that I think is really, really useful, especially when we're with family members or friends that we don't see all that often, and also people we see and we live with, is wait, why am I talking? That's a really cool acronym, because, again, oftentimes, especially at the holidays, there can be conflict because people have different opinions and whatever. And this doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk or express our opinions or share whatever we want to share. But just to bring a bit more mindfulness to, wait, why am I talking? Like, what am do I need to share it? Am I looking for advice? Am I looking for validation? Why am I talking? And then hugs and physical contact. And this is quite a big one, because they can be soothing or they can be the opposite. And this is really, really something that that we can see a lot in our autistic kids. Some kids need the proprioceptive and the input, and they need the hugs, they need the weighted blankets, they want that deep pressure, deep touch. Some kids are the opposite. It's painful, it's actually physically painful for them, and it can also be socially uncomfortable for them, especially from people they don't see that often. So what I wanted to leave you in this slide is, to have a rule that to give and to receive expressions of care and love, we do it as we need them, but we also need to understand and um, uphold the fact that we don't always do it in the same way as other people. And I know that this can be difficult for our autistic kids, but to be honest, it can also be different for our non-autistic relatives who still insist on giving our kids hugs when we have told them that actually our kids don't enjoy them. So this is one to work with, and just again to not take it personally. Everybody gives and receives love in different ways, and it's not better or worse, it's just the way it is. So just to finish off, identify one mindfulness moment. So again, a moment that is going to be easier for us to do a mindfulness activity, one of the many I have offered you here, or even several of them, and to share it with your family. And I think sharing it not as a preaching of, okay, we're going to do mindfulness together now, but as a, I'm going to try this out. If you want to do it with me, or if you want to do it at the same time, or maybe you find your own ways of doing it, that would be great. And if not, that's fine too. But I just want you to be aware that this is what I'm going to try, and that I think that this is going to help me feel less stressed and less tired during the holidays. So that is it, and I would love for us to chat about this. Comments, questions, ideas, and maybe just even brainstorming some of these exercises together. So I'm going to stop the recording here.